Well, let's go ahead and get started. It is 12 o'clock. Welcome to Changes in Choice of Seafood, Emerging Opportunities, presented by Dr. Simone Valle de Souza. Today's webinar is part of an aquaculture marketing series sponsored by the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center, Sea Grant, Purdue University's Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, and Illinois Extension. My name is Amy Schambach, and I'll be your moderator today. So before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. First, we ask that everybody stay muted during the presentation and the question answer period. The format of today's webinar is going to be Simone is going to talk for about 45 minutes. We'll have 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer at the end. We will be collecting your questions in the chat window. So feel free to put those in the chat box at any time during the presentation, and I'll be keeping an eye on that and collecting those. So with that said, I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Simone Valle de Souza. She's an economist and an assistant professor at Michigan State University who specializes in aquaculture and fisheries management and economics. Today, Dr. Valle de Souza is going to be sharing some of her recent research findings with us from the 2019 NICRAC project titled Choices of Seafood, an analysis of the North Central Region market for farm-raised seafood. Welcome. We're all ears and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Amy. It's so good to be here. Apologies for my confusions today. I have to be on the telephone, unfortunately, but I hope it works well. So I'm here to talk about a survey mostly, but we call it Changes in Choice of Seafood, Emerging Opportunities. It's part of the project called Choice of Seafood, which is being sponsored by the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center. And it's a work that I'm developing together with Purdue University and South Illinois University. We've got Dr. Quagraini, Knudson, Kinnunen Hitchens, and two PhD students working with us, Etnus and Etminu. And we've been working in several projects, and this what I'm showing you today, if you want to show the next slide, is just a collection of the preliminary results of this survey, the preliminary findings of this survey. So this survey was designed to fill a gap in information regarding specifically consumers' preferences for North Central Region produced and caught species. So we now have, we have a survey that included 16 different fish species plus shellfish and another 4 species of mollusks and seaweed and caviar. So we are looking for consumer preference for seafood, and we were trying to go a bit further from the typical seafood survey that we see from other reports that are normally reporting on salmon, tuna, tilapia, cod, catfish, Alaskan pollock, and seldom we see the species that we produce here in these general surveys, and we want to know what consumers think about our species. A similar work was done in 1999 by Dr. Reap, and since then I haven't seen many other work like this that is including our NCR fish and seafood species. We test these different species for form of product, so we want to know if they are preferred live, fresh, frozen, and with any value added efforts in terms of smoked or shelf stable products. And the other perspective that we look at this survey as well is from the demographics, as normally people do, but especially in this case because we compared the census, the American census from 2010 and 18, and there were significant changes, which I'm going to discuss soon in the next slides. So we're thinking that this is going to significantly impact our demand for fish. And we think that there are some opportunities arising from that. And this is what we're here to show today. So in the next slide, I'm sorry about that. The next slide, we have just a general idea. So we've got 1,400 respondents, and that's included the whole country. It's countrywide survey, and we've got mostly, let me see, the distributions are overall not very important at this point, but just a general introduction on how the respondents look like. We have in the next slide where these respondents are from. So we've got a little bit skewed towards California, New York, Florida, and Texas, as you see at the larger percentage. But then again, even those, we've got like 8%, 10% coming from these specific states, and North Central region states, we've got up to 4% in some cases. Now we start talking about the results, so the preliminary results. So we asked first if these respondents consumed seafood in 2019. So we ran the survey in 2020, and our plan was to ask them about 2019 consumption and then rerun the survey after the pandemic. So this is our idea. We hope that most responses were referring to the previous year, but we just keep in mind that some of them might be reflecting 2020 perceptions or preferences. Now, the good news start here is that 88% of these 1,400 individuals said they have consumed seafood in the past year. So this is a 6% increase already from a report in 2018, and 18% increase since 2011. I'm comparing with these two reports from Intel, where they have they launched these seafood specific reports as well. Again, for the most common other species, not included our target species here, but they do bring information about what was the level of consumption and the preferences in terms of attributes, which we are going to discuss soon as well. So 88%. So it's an increase in number of people who are actually consuming seafood. And from those 88%, 78% said they are eating it once a week or more. And then on the side, you can see that there is also a large proportion of these responded looking for shellfish and mollusks. And even seaweed and caviar are two markets who are increasing as well. So these are good news in terms of the popularity increasing of seafood. Now on the next slide, we see we see the responses to the why not. So we asked those who answered, no, I have not eaten seafood in the past year. We asked why not. So why not preparing at home? And interesting enough, the mostly chosen reason is the fact that they are uncertain on how to prepare the seafood. And this is telling us the value of programs such as the Eat Midwest Fish, right, program that Amy is working with, and other similar programs where we we increase awareness on how to choose your fish at the shop, on how to prepare your choose, and how easy it is to have a barbecue or fish barbecue compared. And so these kind of programs are really, really going to work, and will be beneficial to help these consumers who are uncertain on how to prepare. However, there's still a feeling that fish is too expensive. But let's just keep it aside a moment and think and look at the other ones. If you look at taste, I do not like the taste of seafood in the green bar. This is only bigger than allergies. So it's the least reason. So there is no reason not to eat rather than, I mean, they really enjoy the taste. Apparently, it's a small percentage who doesn't like the taste. So it is a potential for the market. Now, in the next slide, we see the responses for why didn't you eat seafood in a restaurant? And now the too expensive becomes the largest reason why. And we keep thinking, well, so seafood is still perceived as a luxury meal. And we see that when we go to a restaurant, we see that the prices of beef, pork, they are more affordable actually than the seafood. There is still this feeling, and I wonder myself if it's because of the first response when consumers said they don't know how to prepare, so they place an extra value on the chef's knowledge on how to prepare the fish, and they are willing to pay more for the fish because they don't know how to prepare at home. So that could be what the data is telling us. Now, just out of curiosity, you might be wondering what the others are. Others include things like, in terms of the restaurant, I don't go out, I don't eat out, I don't drive. So there are other really exclusive, or my wife doesn't like seafood, things like that. But these are just out of curiosity. But the idea is to think about how do we understand, how do we see, how do we explain to our consumers how to prepare and reduce that fear on how to prepare seafood. That would be one idea to bring them closer to consumption or increase our demand. Now, next slide shows the list of species that we were looking at. We asked what fish did you purchase in the past year? So this is the list that we chose, that we inquired, and this is an interesting one. We see here those popular species such as cod, catfish, tilapia, and the Pacific and Atlantic salmon as the most purchased species. But if you go to the next slide, please, in the next slide, we've got a surprise. In the next slide, we see that they would actually be looking for other species if they were available. So that was our question. What fish would you like to buy if it was available near you? And what we get is a big surprise that the most preferred species is the rainbow trout. And along with salmonids, the Pacific salmon, Atlantic salmon, lake trout, and the whitefish, and our bass down there as well. Bass, by the way, includes largemouth and smallmouth bass. So, but interesting to see that even the bass is preferred to Atlantic salmon, for example. And Atlantic salmon is normally a popular species, right? Now, if you look from this top 6, next what we see is yellow perch. another interesting point, how people would actually be looking for yellow perch as well if it was available. Now, just reminding that this data has a lot of respondents from the south as well. It's not only North Central region consumers. So it might be that these species are popular in the south as well. Now, in the next slide, we have a little bit on this, the shellfish and mollusks. So it tells us that these consumers would be purchasing more of the saltwater shrimp, and scallops is the preferred mollusk. So this is the percentage of those who select they bought shellfish or mollusks in the past year. Then we ask them, which species did you buy? So that's the percentage of those who selected shellfish or mollusks. Now, our next slide shows a summary of what came out of the form of seafood purchase question. So we ask if they bought frozen, fresh, live smoked, or shelf stable, and subdividing into whole fillets or breaded, or tails, which apply for the shellfish, and include prepared as well for the fresh fish. And when we say prepared, we include the marinade and seasoned fillets or portions. And interestingly, there is a slightly bigger but a higher preference for fresh whole rather than frozen whole, which makes sense. And if you go for frozen, then fillets would be the most preferred. Also, fresh fillets would be most preferred than whole or prepared. In terms of shellfish, we've got a preference for the whole shellfish if it is fresh, compared to the whole frozen. So there is a bigger, larger preference for whole if it is fresh. And you see the last three lines, it's a small percentage, but there is still market for live smoked and shelf stable there. We don't get too much in those today because what I'm presenting today are the preliminary results of the survey, but there's more work coming that we're gonna be presenting soon on the live markets specifically and the processed markets specifically as well. So then we're gonna see more into these markets. For the moment, let's go to the next slide and look at the form of fish for frozen fish. So in terms of species, we distributed per species the choices that this respondent stated that they bought. So so from first looking, generally we see that there is a large preference for fillets. We expect that because the consumer would be looking for convenience, right? And it's easy to prepare. So, but then if we look at the breaded and whole, the respondents had the choice to tick fillet and breaded at the same time. So the breaded can also be defilleted as well. Now, you will find out that some species look funny, and we were wondering ourselves. So for example, there is an option for the breaded lake trout, and we wonder where do they buy these, and then we think this data is probably showing us how the consumers prefer to prepare it, perhaps. So we can imply that when they answer the survey on how they bought it, they might be saying that that's the way they chose to prepare it. So yet to be defined. This is the general idea. In the next one, we see the form of fish fresh. And the same idea, there is a preference for fillets rather than whole, except for lake trout. And interestingly enough, because they also have the prepared lake trout, as in marinate or seasoned. So again, we wonder what was this specific data showing. And I would love to discuss this further when we have our questions time. If you guys have any feedback, we can move and discuss further these slides. Now, in the next one, we have shellfish frozen and shellfish fresh. Just a quick comparison between what were the options in terms of frozen and fresh. If you compare the proportion of tails to whole, it is greater for the frozen market than the fresh market, which might be indicating a preference for buying tails if it's frozen rather than fresh. But again, the data is telling us that consumers prefer it whole. In the next slide, we have a little bit of the mollusks. I mean the summary of the mollusks market, with largely preferred fresh to frozen, and live comes next. So this is right, thanks. So in the next slide, we got a summary of wild caught versus farm raised. So we also asked what kind of fish did you buy and the form, and we asked, was it wild caught or farm raised, or are you unsure? And it's interesting to see that the majority, 40 plus, think that, stated that they bought wild caught, but there is 30% who are actually unsure. And I keep thinking that if that unsure also implies a certain level of indifference to the fact whether it was wild caught or farm raised, because we know that labeling requires to be done and be clear about farm raised or wild caught, and a smaller proportion of farm raised is smaller than wild caught. Then we looked into, well, in the next slide, we have shellfish and mollusks. Again, wild caught, farm raised, and unsure. And in this case, we've got separated by species, but we will see again that wild caught is preferred or was bought more than the farm raised. But there is a lot of unsure answers as well, still showing there. In the next slide, we've got a summary of the states. So we presented the map and introduced the respondents. Look, this is the North Central region. And please let us know, did you buy any seafood which was produced or caught in the North Central region, or the non-North Central region states, which is elsewhere in the US, or imported, or are you unsure? So as they were unsure on how the fish is produced or caught, if it's wild caught or farm raised, they are also unsure whether they come from NCR states or not, and sometimes if they are imported or not. So we've got 19, 25, 23% unsure about the origin of their fish and shellfish and mollusks. Now, as we get those 1,400 and divided by the number of states, numbers starts getting smaller. So you see the proximity in the distribution per states. But this gives us this is giving us an idea of what are the consumers' perceptions and where they think their fish come from, in a way. So in our next slide, we have a distribution. I separate per state our list of species. And I know this is a busy graph, and will be the next two will be the same as we show the 12 states of NCR. But I just want to give a general idea. For example, Illinois, individuals who were answering the survey understand that hybrid striped bass, bluegill would be coming from Illinois, and Indiana also hybrid striped bass and bluegill, top of the line. So if you go to the next slide, we've got Michigan. Michigan seems to be known for the walleye, and then Minnesota barramundi. So I think this is showing us more where the individuals thought the fish were coming from. In the next slide, we've got North Dakota, South Dakota, Ohio, Wisconsin. In Ohio, we have the Great Lakes whitefish and walleye at the top. Anyway, but in the next slide, I separate differently just the species that we are more used with, and the states that consumers associate that species with. It's not because I am from Michigan, and I promise I did not change anything, but it seems that Michigan's pretty famous for most of these species, except for the tilapia. But of course, if you look at bluegill, apparently Illinois is also famous for bluegill. Illinois, again, on Great Lake whitefish. It might not be that they bought the fish from this state, which in some cases, some of you are going to argue, but it is showing what the consumers thought, the origin that the consumer thought was of that fish they bought. Now, I keep talking about consumers, yes, and we want to know their perception. So in the next slide, I'm also exploring the attributes. So in terms of attributes, there is this one thing, the discussion, the long-standing discussion between wild caught and farm-raised fish. So on purpose, I separate attributes that would be more of a search and perception attribute, and separated in another question, which I'm going to show next, the wild caught and farm raised. And my point being here is that we have been seeing a change in consumers' perceptions in relation to wild caught. So looking back at the data from 2011, from that report I mentioned before from Intel, 62% was preferring wild caught. And that number has been decreasing over the years, with us now having 59%. What was that you saw before? Reducing the numbers of the people who are buying wild caught. And there is an increased level of importance given to healthy, fresh, 30 parts certified, and non-GMO and other things. But what we see also in reports is that there seems to be an understanding that wild caught could be related with freshness as well, with healthier. But then again, this is coming from a report in 2016 when they mentioned that consumers were putting more value in the healthy and safety, especially after they saw reports on wild caught fish that had intoxication or contamination of some sorts. So there is a change in the consumer behavior towards a better understanding of what wild caught means and what fresh and healthy and sustainable mean. So we purposely separated wild caught attribute from these attributes. Okay, so back to the attributes here. Healthy is the most important attribute by far, I mean, together with fresh. This is coming from the aggregated data. So altogether in a bucket, healthy is almost as important as fresh, a little bit more actually. We've got 59% in healthy, and well, that's the sum of both. Okay, and fresh comes next, and then the price comes in third place. We're going to go back to this soon. And US produced is very important after that, and then sustainability. Now, if you go to the next slide, we separate all the attributes that the producer has control over. So in this case, safety. I don't know if the letters are too small. I'm going to read for you. So the first one is safe, if the food is safe. The second one is the presentation. The third is non-hormones. And then non-GMO, wild-caught, farm-raised. And the last is third-party certified. So safety is the biggest concern here. Most of very important choices for safe, followed by non-hormones, and then presentation. And then non-GMO is almost together with wild-caught. And just to show you that concerns about healthy and safety are still above wild-caught or farm-raised. On the side here, I just listed what are the others. So individuals also typed what are the other things that they find important apart from the attributes we listed here out of curiosity. So no mercury, it's a typical one. We talk about predators. Clean, affordable, convenient. So other ways of in a way saying what the attributes said. There's a concern with smell, but again, we know that this is about the age of the fish, freshness, and yummy, nonetheless. Now, to look at these attributes or the preference for these attributes, we have to break down into the demographics because for starters, the responses change significantly. So in the next slide, I just want to show you, this is a comparison between the last two census data. And what I did here was to estimate the changes in composition of the population in the North Central region. So these are the percentage changes. So what this graph is showing, for example, if you look at the purple bar, which is the proportion of Asian descendant in the population, we have an increase of 50% on that proportion in states such as Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, even more than 50. Now, if you look at the blue for Hispanic, again, North Dakota, South Dakota, there's a significant increase in the proportion of Hispanic or Latino in these states. And the same applies for Black or African American, North Dakota, most significant change, South Dakota. So I'm trying to show here the differences in the demographics of these states' populations in the past 10 years. Then in the next slide, We also look at the age. Again, this is the percentage change. So the percentage of the population belong to each one of these age brackets, and how it's been changing over this same period between the two census data. I'm looking forward to see the next one now. But we've got increase in the proportion of the population belonging to the millennials between 24 and 44 years old, and the baby boomers, and a reduction in proportion of the population for the Generation X. So it's interesting to know who are our clients and how our demand is composed when we look at the following slides. So this one now, the changes in income. So the changes in income, again, are showing that our states are wealthier. I apologize, that should be a comma in the amount instead of a dot, but these are the brackets of income reported in the census, and each one of these bars is the change between these two census data reporting. And we see that there is a positive change in terms of earnings of 75,000 or more in all our states. So with that in mind, now we start looking the next diagram. We look at the demographics per attribute. Now, there are many ways of looking at this data, and you will be seeing more of this later. But one way to look at is, okay, let's see what is the proportion of each one of these groups that find very important these specific claims. So here we have very important being produced in the USA on the left, and very important locally sourced on the right. We see, so just coming back from those who said very important or not, this is the percent of each of the ethnic groups, right? So together, the block of the ethnic group will sum up to 4, the block will sum up to 100, those 4 will sum up, they're 5, sum up to 100. And again, the distribution between the income brackets and the age brackets. So what we see here is that locally sourced as well as produced in USA are very important to white 35 to 44 years old and earning between 25,000 and 50,000. One way of looking at the data. And also notice that they are very alike. The consumer's perception about locally sourced and from the USA are very close together. But if you look at the numbers that you don't have, but I do here, it's telling us that produced in the USA, okay, the white choices in produced in the USA is 72%, while locally sourced is 73%. So that group still favors locally sourced over from USA. And the same applies for the age group 35 to 44. It is locally sourced is more important than the USA, than made in the USA. Now, in the next slide, similar rationale. We've got another 2 claims that can be close together or look very similar in the results, which are the very important healthy on the top and very important fresh on the bottom. Very closely related, but healthy is preferred for the groups of Asian, Hispanic, and Black. They favor healthy above fresh. while the group white favors fresh over healthy. What else can we see that's interesting here? So Asians, Hispanic, and Black are favoring healthy over the fresh. Yeah, but there's more in the next one. Let's look at the next one. Now we compare safe and presentation. So we have safe on the top and presentation on the bottom. So it's a perception, it's a concern about having safe food, safely produced, and a concern about the presentation. One interesting report I was reading from the market the other day is that 2021 is the year where food has to be Instagrammable. It's an important attribute now, apparently. So yes, the presentation is important. But when we come look into our data here, we can see that safe is more important to white than presentation, while the other ethnic groups place the presentation above safe. So again, if we look at the data, we've got a majority saying very important, white saying very important for safe and presentation. 35 to 44 years old are those who value more both safety and presentation. And younger generations, in fact, place presentation first, and the very high income and those earning 25,000 or less, the two extremes of the income brackets favor presentation, but everybody else in between favors safe food. Now, if we look from a different perspective, if we put them together, now, like I said, we can look at these different perspectives considering all the demographics. So now we have in these three parts, on the left, we have the age groups, in the middle, income groups, and on the right, we have the, this is the next slide, by the way. Sorry about that, Amy. So the next slide, yeah. And then we have the ethnic groups on the right. In this case, we've got the bars you see from left to right. The dark blue is very important. The orange is important. The gray is indifferent. Yellow is not important. And the light blue is not at all important. So look for the dark blue, which is very important, divided by these groups regarding the attribute price. The only one that has the dark blue above all other options, the only group that defines the price as very important are the group between 35 and 44 years old. And when you look at income brackets or the ethnic groups, you don't see the price coming first. In fact, if you look at the ethnic groups, if you look at Asian and Hispanic, most of them said not at all important. The price is not at all important. So, and if you look at what I found interesting in the middle group of the income brackets, the smallest, less than 25,000 earnings per year, find not at all important the price of the fish, which is very interesting. So overall, younger generations find price not important or not at all important. And the groups 35 to 44 years old, individuals earning 150,000 or more, are the only groups placing high importance on price. And as for other ethnic groups, most Hispanic and Asian groups found the price not at all important. Native Americans were indifferent to price, and the majority in the Black group of respondents chose not important. And majority of whites selected important. So you might consider that. I might be forcing when I say that not everyone cares about price. Important also counts, right? So in our next slide, I want to touch base on sustainability, sustainable. Again, looking for the very important dark blue bar, it's again the highest in the bracket of 35 years old to 44, and white also considered sustainability very important. It's interesting in the income brackets there is a lot of not important as well, but we see if we look back on the age group on the left, we get more importance given by the younger generations, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 as well, and 55 to 64. It's there's a big not at all important there, but yeah, still important to some. Very important to high income earners, and very important to the white group in general. Now, our next slide, we've got attributes per demographics, comparing farm raised and wild caught. Because I said I was very interested in who values wild caught, I just want to compare with the farm raised as well. And what we see here is that the non-millennials, or the older groups from 35 to 45, 45 to 55, and 55 on the bottom graph on the left, we've got those who value more wild caught. But then again, if you look up the top graph on farm raised, we also have individuals choosing very important to be farm raised as well. So a bit of distribution there. Now, interesting to see that in the ethnic group relating to wild caught, the bottom right, we see how the group, the Hispanic group, finds not important at all to be wild caught. Black, not important, but the white, you can say that there is a lot of indifference, but yeah, important and very important is close to it. So I talk too much, and it is already 50 minutes after the hour, so 10 to the hour. And I want to have more discussion. So Amy, I was wondering if we should open for questions now and start discussion and see what the audience feels about what this survey is telling us.
Absolutely. So the first question that came in is actually a comment from Sean Oliver. He said that availability of frozen bagged trout fillets is hurting the consumer. Most of what is available is steelhead. As an industry, we're leaving money on the table by not producing frozen retailed rainbow trout fillets. As a retail buyer, I have never been offered this product.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Your first question is from Maryland, and she's asking, is this same work being done for different regions of the United States?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So respondents of the survey are from the entire country, but the focus on the NECREC first is because we are funded by NECREC, but also our focus was on these species that we produced here, but we also have species that are produced all over the country in our survey as well, to balance. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I understood it in the first place.
I think you answered it, but if you didn't, we'll wait for the chat window to see if there's a follow-up question. So Dr. Paul Brown asks, one of the important markets for live, fresh, locally produced fish in the NCRAC region is the Asian community in major cities such as Chicago. Can you discern at this point in your analysis how well you surveyed that important market?
It is indeed, Paul, a very important market. Part of this work involves a specific study on willingness to pay for species in these live markets. That work is still in progress. We should have results soon to show, but you were right, and we're working on that.
Okay, next question. Many of these attributes rank very important to the 35 to 44 age group. Do you expect that to move with them throughout time, or when that age division moves up to the next age division, would you expect these same results to move with them or to stay specific to that age range of 35 to 45? As in, do you think it is a millennial thing, or do you think it has more to do with working childbearing age group?
Well, there are 2 points here. That's a very good question. Thank you. If we go back to the description of the data, the large majority of respondents were within that age bracket. So we had not large majority, but 30%, almost 30% coming from 35 to 44, and a bit more than that, 25 to 34. So millennials were the majority of the respondents, which might be skewing the data towards very important on that age as well. So until we do further preparation of the data, we can't tell. I mean, we should be able to look into this from different perspectives, but that could be one reason why we have so much. But indeed, they are valuing more, not only from this research. These results, these preliminary results, come to confirm other reports that say that the millennials are looking for healthy and fresh, and they put these claims above claims of wild caught, for example, or even above price. They do value that. If that's gonna move as the population grows older, I do hope so, because I think this is a good thing that we are individuals are actually looking for safe, sustainable, healthy, and fresh food. But I think it would move as the population grows. I mean, as the age group gets older, as you said.
Thank you. Are you ready for your next question?
Yes, sure.
Okay, Dr. Paul Brown asks, based on this work and other projects you're involved with, do you have a feeling if consumers understand sustainability and if fish farms are using sustainability in their marketing?
You're asking for my personal opinion, Paul. From what I read, from what I work with, I think the understanding of sustainability is a bit, I mean, how do I say that? I don't think consumer understands the concept of sustainability most of the time, and only because the word is being used in so many different ways, and people just have access to the information, and the information is confusing and convoluted. So I think there is many ways to look at the term sustainability, and it's sometimes difficult to define. But in terms of aquaculture and wild caught choices specifically, I have a stronger opinion that sustainability applies for either case, either wild caught or farmed fish, but consumers do not understand, from what I see in the results, the differences between wild caught and farm raised sustainability. So there is a lot still to do, a lot of work still to do to raise awareness on how sustainable aquaculture can be, the same way that wild fisheries are sustainable as well. And in fact, this is the way to go. We have to clarify that, because wild fisheries have already reached their sustainable catch levels. And if our population is growing and we need more fish, we certainly need to promote aquaculture, and we certainly need to trust that our aquaculture are doing the right thing, and promoting safe production, sustainable production. Did I answer the question? I just went on.
We'll have to see what Paul said. Paul, did she answer your question?
I'm trying to do a thumbs up, so it is a challenging issue. It is, and I fully agree with Simone's answer there. And yet it's one that's based on her data. It looks like it's increasing in awareness and interest among consumers.
I think I missed. I didn't hear the last part, Paul. I'm sorry. I tried to fix the volume.
Oh, I just said that based on your work, it seems to be an increasing area of consideration on the part of consumers. So I have made that argument. I hear some pushback from some of our friends and colleagues. That, so I guess hard cold data is always good to have, and we'll see if we keep working on this topic.
Right. Thanks.
Next question is from Jessica. She asks, can you tell us how you advertised the survey and whether it was given online, by paper, in person, etc.?
Okay, so the survey was, sorry, just fixing my phone, was distributed through Qualtrics, and Qualtrics offers rewards in terms of points in their system for people who will be answering the surveys. It's administered by Qualtrics and ourselves in terms of determining good responses, bad responses, reliable responses, and distribution of responses. Now, the way Qualtrics advertise, I'm not sure, because they have a database of all enrolled respondents, and according to the characteristics and requirements for the distribution of the survey, they will be sending requests to particular groups. So there was a point where we saw that the data was coming too much from one or two states, and we want to spread around the country. So they would stop advertising in those states and try to get more people from other states. So it was a kind of a living, moving thing that was happening, and I'm not sure how exactly the advertising happens. Must be through their email system. And yes, it was an online survey through the email. Yeah. I am so sorry. Are you muted?
I was muted. Sorry about that.
Now you are back. Yeah.
So next question from Christopher. When you refer to wild caught, is this purchased from a retail outlet, or could the consumers have caught them themselves?
Right. So all our questions referred to the fish you purchased. And we want to know if the fish they purchased was sourced, was farm raised or wild caught. So the responder would be relying on the label of the product they bought that says where the fish comes from and whether or not it's wild caught or if it's farm raised.
Thank you. We have at least one more question. I know we are over time now, so we'll wrap up with this last. Okay, you're okay. Okay, keep them coming.
I'm okay. I like the discussion.
So Nicole Wright asks, what would you summarize as one of the most interesting or important takeaways from those trying to better reach consumers in the North Central region?
I would say from what we saw in this survey, our species, rainbow trout, is a strong species to be distributed not only here, but the whole country, apparently, according to the survey. And I found that the other opportunities arising for the change in population, for the change in age groups, incomes, and ethnic groups, how they are favoring healthier and fresh rather than price. And some of them are concerned with presentation. So a good idea would be to start focusing on labeling your product as hormone-free, non-GMO, which would imply healthy, safe production, sustainable production, and target all markets, especially the youngsters. So if you can choose, I don't know how you distribute it, if it is through a process or if you go to the markets, you could perhaps even try the live markets, because this is another growing market, as Paul mentioned before, and we are identifying another growing market.
That wasn't an intentional lead-in, but our next webinar next month, we're going to be having guest speakers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they're going to be talking about the process verification program, which is available for farmers who want to verify their product, and there's a label that's associated with that as an option. Does anybody have any more questions before we wrap up? I think we've given them, we may have questioned them out. I want to thank everybody for participating in our webinar. You can expect 2 follow-up emails from me. I'll send one with a survey. So for the extension part of this webinar event, it's really important for us to get feedback from you so we can do better next time and bring you topics that are really relevant and important. And then once the video has been closed captioned and is published online, I'll go ahead and share that too. And if there's in the future, if Simone has any resource links or anything, we'll also pass those on in the future. So next for the webinar series, we have March 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our guest speakers are going to be Jeff Waite and Angie Snyder from the USDA, and they're going to be talking about the PVP program. And then in April, on the 20th at 11:30 Eastern Time, we're going to kind of switch course and we're going to do a panel discussion. And we're going to explore the topic of different market channels, what buyers want. So for that talk, we're going to have Stacy Schultz from Fortune Fish. She's going to be representing processing and distribution. We're going to have Chef Jeff Fox from Fox Valley Tech. He's going to be representing chefs and restaurants. And then Paul Hitchens from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, who's going to share his perspective on brokering and what fish haulers want if you're looking at selling into the live market. So Simone, thank you so much for your time and sharing your results with us. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone for joining us.